tonight we are very fortunate to have Illinois Air National Guard Chief Master Sergeant Jennifer Aurora with us. As one of the top enlisted leaders in the state's Air Guard, she brings a wealth of experience and knowledge about this vital branch of the National Guard here in Illinois. So please join me in welcoming the Command Chief for the Illinois Air National Guard, Jennifer Aurora.
Can everyone hear me? It's kind of weird. I've never had a microphone before. This could be dangerous. Anyway, good evening, welcome, and thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to come speak with you tonight. As Edith said, my name is Jennifer Aurora, and I am the State Command Chief for the Illinois Air National Guard. I would like this presentation to be interactive, so if you have questions, don't wait till the end. If there's something that you want to ask about, go ahead and ask. If there's a comment you'd like to make, go ahead and provide that comment. I like to learn just as much as you do. This is a learning for both of us. So before I explain what a command chief is, what it entails, who I am, I want to start from the beginning, more specifically, my beginning. So I was raised on the southwest side of Bloomington on a small family farm. And I used some things, Catherine Bike, if you know anything about the southwest side of Bloomington. I was trying to relate to when I grew up in the 70s. And that area right there is where I grew up. And in the 70s and 80s, it was considered rural in Bloomington. Obviously, if you've driven past there now, does not look anything like it did 30, 40 years, 50 years ago. So that's where I grew up. My father worked for the railroad, and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. Other than two uncles who were drafted during the Vietnam War, and we never knew that they had served, other than their pictures were on my grandmother's mantle, because that was a time that stories weren't shared. They didn't bring back a lot of that. They weren't. It's not that they weren't proud. It wasn't that we weren't appreciative of what they gave. I had no day-to-day exposure to the military and what a current day commitment would mean or the benefits it could offer. My senior year of high school, during the time when you're considering your colleges, your future, and what I want to be when I grow up, my best friend asked me to attend a military drill weekend with her father, who was a sergeant major in the Illinois Army National Guard. So as most of you may know, a drill weekend for a guardsman is the commitment that once a month weekend commitment that we give to serve our time. They're full of readiness, ancillary training, briefings, wartime exercises, medical requirements, on-the-job training within your career field, and all of that is crammed into 2 days, so it's a really crazy busy time. But while attending this drill weekend, I had only spent a few hours in the basement of the armory sorting supplies to know that the Army National Guard was not my cup of tea. So luckily, Sergeant Major Meyer was open-minded and very thick-skinned and took us down to meet with the Air National Guard recruiters. This is where both my best friend and I proceeded to commit to serving 6 years with the Illinois Air National Guard in lieu of a 4-year college scholarship. This is paid for in full by the state of Illinois. Shameless plug. The Illinois National Guard, the 4-year college tuition is one of the many benefits the state offers guardsmen in Illinois. I recently did an interview for a college course on women's history, and I did not think about it at the time. But when I was offered the list of positions to choose from in 1989, the administrative and more secretarial or female jobs, as we would say, was on one list, and the more male-considered positions were on another. We weren't deterred from choosing a profession in security forces or maintenance, but it wasn't the norm. After getting all the information on each open career field, I chose personnel, which now would equate to human resources in your civilian workforce. To say my parents were stunned and surprised that evening is an understatement. I enlisted in 1989 during a time of peace, which put my parents at ease, but that would soon change because in 1990, while in basic training, Desert Storm began. It is not lost on me that 35 years ago today, I would have been in my 8th day of basic training. Probably tired, hungry, missing my home, and wondering what I had gotten myself into. I remember watching the 4th of July fireworks from the small windows in the dormitory, and I just knew I would never see them in person again. Insert a little dramatic immaturity. But I successfully completed the then 6-week, it is now since increased to 8.5-week, mental and physical challenge from the U.S. Air Force Basic Training in San Antonio, Texas, Lackland Air Force Base. Brings back memories, huh? I see a lot of head shaking. For basic training, I traveled by bus to Keesler Air Force Base in Gulfport, Mississippi, where I spent 3 weeks completing the personnel self-paced course. Yes, you heard me correctly. 3 weeks, self-paced. I sat at a computer all day and reviewed regulations and policies. I used a computer to answer the questions, but still physically had to get up and go to a library of regulations and policies to find answers. They printed off everything. It was an entire room, just like going into a library, and you had to know that was what I was being trained on. The hard part was memorizing the series or number that correlated with the subject. For example, regulations or policies that govern flying operations data would be found in the 11 series, nursing in the 46 series, and so on. So once you found your book, once you found your series, you could easily glance through the glossary and find your answer. It was self-paced, so I did not waste any time in completing my course within 3 weeks so I could go home. I was guard. I knew I was going home. I knew I would go back to sleeping in my bed, as opposed to the active duty who spent their technical school figuring out their first assignment. I was eager to get home and continue to my college with a short stop along the Illinois River for flood relief. So the minute I was released from active duty, I jumped right into state active duty and went to the Illinois River to sandbag. So fast forward 4 years after completing my college degree without debt, shameless plug, and starting my first civilian job, I continued to be a member of the Guard, which still required the 1 weekend a month responsibilities. I worked with a company in Bloomington for 7 years. But following 11 years of being what we call a weekend warrior, a college graduate, I quit my civilian job, was offered and accepted a full-time AGR position within the 183rd Wing in Springfield, Illinois. An AGR is an active Guard reserve member. You're a federal employee working at a state-run Guard base, earning active duty time, active duty benefits, as if I committed to the U.S. Air Force active duty. This position provided me a plethora of responsibilities, benefits, and most importantly, the exposure to the culture, the core values, and a military way of life. And I still got to return to my home in Bloomington, Illinois. Becoming an AGR allowed me to see day-to-day the opportunities and leadership path firsthand. I spent 14 years working in security forces and wing headquarters as their personnelist. But wanting a challenge, I applied for and got the base training and education position, which is responsible for the education and development of all wing members, enlisted and officer, voluntary and involuntary education. In the past, you enlisted in a Guard base. You typically spent your entire 20 years attached to that Guard base. I referenced my father worked for the railroad earlier. He spent 40 years with the railroad. He did not change positions. That's not true anymore in society or a civilian job, and that's not the norm now in the military, or especially in the Guard. In the past 10 years, the emphasis has been on gaining joint and national level experience, breaking that tradition. Therefore, after working within base training and education, I took a position at the state level headquarters there at Camp Lincoln, working with A1, A for Air Force, 1 for personnel. It was my first time working at the state level and among general officers. I got to experience a joint work environment as we shared the building with Army and Air. The Army and Air state leadership shared the same building. I worked personnel issues for 3,000 Illinois Air National Guard members, acting as a liaison between the wings and the Guard Bureau housed at Andrews Air Force Base. I did this before returning to the 183rd Wing to step into more leadership roles. During my 35 years, I have deployed in support of my country during Operations Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom. I have filled sandbags and slept in high school gyms on state active duty in Southern Illinois. I have been fortunate enough to travel to Italy, Hawaii, Alaska, and almost every active duty base within the continental United States. I received an F-16 incentive flight, which only increased my respect for the role and risk a pilot takes, especially in a single-seat aircraft. I completed a competitive application, was selected, and represented the United States Air Force internationally for a development course called In Lead, which just meant in leadership, international leadership, where I had the opportunity to work alongside leaders in the military from Canada, Switzerland, Norway, Germany, and the United Kingdom. So this was us. We were at the Halston Hall, Royal Air Force in United Kingdom, right outside of London. And the whole point, if you can see this picture here, was to do exercises. Get the bucket across stumps, and back here you see it's a netting, and all it was is ropes tied to a tree. But you had to get each member through a hole in that netting to the other side. And what it taught us was, you're now in a warfare or any type of campaign, you're going to work internationally. You're going to work jointly, whether it's with your own Army, Air, but we worked with German, and they were Marines, and they were Army, and they were Air Force, and we had to. And you think it's easy, and then you thought you had it mastered. At the time, I think I was a master sergeant. I'm a master sergeant. I got this, but it was very hard because the verbiage is not the same, and how we communicate is not the same, and our culture and core values were not all the same. So it was a really great experience for me, and I still speak to all of these guys there. But you can see, she is my equivalent. The female in the first picture is my equivalent there, and there were more females in the Royal Air Force than you would see probably here. But in my group, I was the only female, so even though I wanted to be as tough as the guys, they still treated me like I was a female. Recently, I traveled to Poland under our State Partnership for Peace program, where we met our international counterparts, extended our support, and submerged ourselves in their culture, forming a valued joint friendship. The State Partnership program was established in 1991. It has 85 partnerships with 93 nations around the globe. It was essentially created when the breakup of the former Soviet bloc, so what they wanted to do was tie reserve airmen and soldiers to 3 of those countries so that they had support. So they had, they could build their own military, and they had support in training and bolstering their enlisted officers. And that's what we've done. Illinois has held a partnership with Poland since 1993. So we have had that, and we have gone over there multiple times with the C-130, the KC-135, and now the Army helps. Here's just a map outlining the National Guard State Partnership Program. And I forgot to add, it is a Guard. It's a total reserve program that we do, and these are all the countries that we have affiliations with. If you look, it'll tell you what state, but it spans across the whole world, and it's just an awesome program. Here's some pictures. Like I said, we immersed ourselves in their culture. You get to learn to be and learn, and it's a totally different. It gives you a whole new perspective on what you do and what you stand for, because they're respected over there. As stated in my introduction, I am the State Command Chief for the Illinois Air National Guard, where I'm charged with overseeing the development, morale, and welfare of 3,000 airmen and women throughout 3 wings and 1 headquarters. The 182nd Airlift Wing in Peoria, Illinois flies C-130s. The 126th Air Refueling Wing, Scott Air Force Base, Belleville, Illinois, flies KC-135s. The 183rd Wing in Springfield, Illinois has an Air Operations Center, and then the Joint Force Headquarters at Camp Lincoln, Springfield, Illinois. I am the first female command chief to ever be selected in the history of the Illinois Air National Guard. Thank you. Also, in my previous role, I served as the 183rd Wing Command Chief, where I was also the first female to hold that position at the wing level. So, quick story. During a promotion board to Master Sergeant, which is an E7, I was asked where I saw myself in 5 to 10 years, and I kind of smugly, confidently told them I would be the first female command chief of the 183rd Wing. And I jokingly, when I walked aside, I was like, we forget all yours. You just tell them what they want to hear, right? But I didn't think much of it until I got promoted as the command chief, the first female command chief of the 183rd Wing. So it just goes to show that anything is possible if you're willing to work hard for it, which was awesome. Being the command chief for the Illinois Air National Guard allows me to represent our state and our nation, where I contribute to outlining the future of all enlisted Guard members within the state. I represent Region 4, which consists of Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Ohio as the primary on the Enlisted Field Advisory Council. Here we discuss and address issues affecting airmen across our region and relay them to the Command Chief of the Air National Guard for action. Things like tuition for all military members. Right now, active duty is the only one that gets tuition assistance. So we try to do that. Health care for everyone, TRICARE. We try to get TRICARE for Guard members because that seems to be something that they need. And those are the issues that we bring, and it goes to the Guard Bureau. From there, it's sent straight to Congress. So it's really, I'm allowed to be the voice for 3,000 airmen in my state for the things that they need to be successful in their careers. I am supremely proud of military leadership across the board, hiring and promoting females. I still believe there's a lot of ground to cover in getting more minorities in roles of leadership. I still attend many state, regional, and national meetings where I am the only female in attendance. In fact, traveling to Poland, I was the only female in my group, and it was sometimes comical to watch the males when I would ask for a hair dryer, a bathroom break, or a Diet Coke. They're just not used to having a female at that level right along. Currently, I still reside in Bloomington with my husband, who works for USAA, which is a company that provides financial services to members of the military and their families. To take the command chief position, I had to place my active duty retirement on hold and go back to being a drill status guardsman. So at that time, after 33 years being in the military, I had to re-enter the civilian workforce. So I currently work 100% remotely for a healthcare recruiting company based out of Jacksonville, Florida. It's amazing how things have changed. That would never have been an opportunity before. My husband and I have a 13-year-old daughter who starts her 8th grade year this year. I share this with you because that is why I'm here. The difference between being a member of the National Guard and the active duty is that it allows you to stay locally, as opposed to moving multiple times throughout the United States and or the world. This allows my daughter to grow up with cousins, grandparents, other family members, and close friends. It also affords me an extra layer of support that sometimes is not always available. It should not be lost on anyone that no one in the military, whether full-time or part-time, makes this commitment on their own. Often in uniform, I am thanked for my service, but this service cannot come without anyone else's support. It comes with sacrifices to self and to family. So support of family, friends, and community is how we successfully make this work. One of the most challenging parts of serving the United States in any military capacity is the balance between work and family. Let me repeat that. One of the most challenging parts of serving the United States in any military capacity is the balance between work and family. We all know that every job that we ever hold, whether in the military, or as a civilian, has commitments. But what is unique about being in the military, and especially a member of the National Guard, as opposed to active duty, is that we are citizen soldiers. We can be called upon to serve our state. We can be called upon to serve our federal government, peacetime and wartime. We can be called upon to serve under our state governor to battle raging waters during a spring flood or a snowstorm in winter, and even recently, a COVID testing site. And under our president, when international tensions grow. We often give up our children's weekend sporting events, weddings, birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays to fulfill our commitment. A high ops tempo after 9/11 and domestic disturbances sometimes require airmen across our country to leave their families within 72-hour notice to support our country and our state whenever and wherever needed. Later, I'll end my presentation with some demographics and the main concerns facing the Illinois National Guard today. These topics are a whole community concern, and they follow trends we are seeing in society. Resilience is the key to balancing each audience and a focus within our military ranks. Maintaining fitness, engaging our mental health, seeking spiritual outlets, and spending time with family helps balance the commitment we ask each member of the Illinois Air National Guard. Another great resilience tool unique to National Guard members is their sense of community. Being able to engage with your hometown or local community is imperative to grounding oneself and supporting those that support us in times of need. As stated many times, September will represent 35 years of service for me. I've seen a lot of change. I've seen aircraft change from F-4 to F-16, and then a total loss of aircraft at the 183rd Wing in Springfield, Illinois. The move of the 126 Air Refueling Ring from the O'Hare Field to a co-location at Scott Air Force Base. And of course, the hair. That's our latest during COVID. You got to wear your hair down, secured still, but down for females, and it's about time. And the obvious, the first female command chief of the state of Illinois. Lots of change. So this year, like every other year, I'm contemplating retirement. Every year I reconsider because this has been such a huge part of my life. This uniform represents how I define myself and how the community defines my role. I continue to serve because I enjoy making the military a better place for its members. I also enjoy encouraging the next generation's innovation and thoughts to making the military a better place. I enjoy the camaraderie with brethren both within the United States military, my international counterparts, and the civilian relationships I have forged. I fall asleep at night with the highest job satisfaction, knowing that my sacrifices, which do not feel like sacrifices at all, are helping support my family, friends, and community. I've done a lot of talking on my first set of slides. So do I have any questions? Because I have more to go, or we can just keep rolling with the presentation. Okay.
Yeah. What was among your first place, here in Illinois, where you went to, put bags of sand, whether it be for storms or tornadoes?
At Grafton, Illinois. I'll never forget it. I stayed at a high school. We slept in cots. We got up. We saved little towns, and you soon realize that you cannot hold back Mother Nature. You can try to deter her a little bit, and you can try to slow her down, but it's, you can't change it. But it was experience. I call it sandbagging because we physically had a shovel and a bag and we filled sands. Now it's automatically done by a machine and you just pick up a sandbag and put it on the levee. But it's awesome. So Grafton, Illinois.
What year was there?
I went in 1993. Any other questions? I'll go on my other slides. You can ask questions once, and I just didn't want to. These are some of the fun things that I get to do. Be the first person to get a COVID shot, because no one wanted to get a COVID shot. So they're like, if you do this, then everyone else will follow. That's untrue. People didn't want to get the vaccine shot. This is a really cool thing. When I became the command chief of the 183rd Wing, I was the first female, and it was right before Women's History Month, and our PA put it together, and they put my picture in the back of it, so it was pretty cool. And I didn't feel it, because to me, I'm me. I was just the next command chief, which is the way it should be. But for others, and I see that when I walk through the different bases, the other females will give me a shout out, be like, Chief! And it means a lot. It means a lot to them to make it to that rank and to have that position. It meant a lot for them to put my hair in a ponytail. So it's very hard. If you've worn your hair in a bun, cinched up for 20 years, it's very hard to let it, it felt weird. I was like, there's something on me. And I wore it, because you get tired of your hair breaking and the headaches. But I walked across a parking lot at Scott Air Force Base, and a young airman screamed out, "Way to represent, Chief!" And I knew then I would never put my hair back up, because those are the changes that our young airmen want to see. And when we don't move and change with them, they no longer want to be a part of this. I mean, we keep our core values, and we keep the work ethic we have, and our profession of profession of arms, but we have to change with society so that they want to continue to serve and be a part of this great organization. No. And then I get to do some other really fun, swanky stuff. I'm all dressed up. But I get to go to graduations, and again, it goes back to the recognition and being there for your airmen. Command retired Chief Ron Anderson, he was the Command Chief Master Sergeant of the Air National Guard, and he came to Springfield, Illinois. I mean, it's just an honor to be with those. These are my airmen, who are now a lot older. They're going to outrank me someday. Tradition, promotions. This is my daughter, and it goes back to that sense of community. You wear your uniform out, and you should be proud of it. And it's always nice to be a part of a school function or a community event. These are the things that I said ground you, and it makes you, even though I go back to my hometown, there's still a separation. You're in the military, and it does separate you. You don't have to wear your uniform to feel different from everyone else, because we're different than everyone else. 2% of society can serve and do serve in the military, and it's different. You feel it. But being part of a community event like this is Wreaths Across America, and these are people other than those are my daughter and my mother, but these people are in the military, and that's where we ground ourselves. This is where we keep that tie, and it's very important. And those are the things to give back, because people give so much for us. So I think that's awesome. Lincoln's Challenge Academy is in Rantoul, Illinois. We are one of a handful. There's more than, but not every state participates in it. It's for at-risk youth. They have to have a sponsor, and it's military run. It's not out of the same pot of money. It doesn't come out of anything, but they do things, and we go over there regularly and volunteer and support them. And it's just an awesome place to know that we're like a last hope for them. We get a lot of kids from Chicago area or St. Louis area, and but it's guard run. when you retire from the military, usually that's where you funnel through sometimes. And that's mine, and I'll get to, yeah. Illinois National Guard. So this is going to be a little bit about the Air and Army. It's going to be more demographics and some things. It's also going to highlight some of the issues and trends that we have in the military now that I think affect society, because in the Guard, society is the Guard. You're a citizen soldier. Every dot you see on this map is an Air Force wing or an armory. We recruit in every zip code in the state. We represent a diverse cross-section of civilian experience and occupation. As you know, Governor Pritzker is our Commander-in-Chief. We have an international reach, which I already things, state partnership program. We have Poland, which now more than ever comes into play with Ukraine. We did, we always went over there. You go into Poland, everyone's like, oh wow, that was a fun trip. Let's go to Poland. And now people are like, wow, it's really important. It was a really important responsibility or important task that we took on, because Poland's ready to defend themselves. We have counter drug, the challenge, which is Lincoln's challenge. Here's some demographics. It's kind of hard to read, but it kind of pairs up active duty with the Guard. So I like to point out there's a higher percentage of females in the Guard than there is in active duty. This is another big one. The percent 25 years old or younger. There are more people older in the Guard, which is true. We're an older force. We tend to stay a lot longer, i.e. 35 years in the Guard, because it's not a hard commitment to make. I'm not moving around. I get to stay at home. Number of separations and losses. So active duty loses about 157,000, and the Guard and Reserve lose about 121,000, and that goes back to the difference between being active duty and being Guard. You get to be at home. You still have a sense of community. Your community supports you, and they typically stay a little bit longer. So there are environmental and cultural aspects to the military. So we have a lot of high stress. After Iraqi freedom and all of that, our ops tempo increased immensely. And we were putting guardsmen that hadn't been in a wartime situation in a lot of years, so it really has come to hit them. The Guard is mostly young, middle to low income backgrounds, male dominated, they're macho, tough. Suicide in the Illinois National Guard. I'm not going to talk about all of these trends in depth, but these are some of the things that are affecting our soldiers. And these are some of our big concerns. So I explained what a drill weekend is and all of the things you have to cram in there. And one of the big things in here is the resilience piece, and we're taking it seriously because as a guardsman, I keep going back to this, but you are a big, huge part of your community, and you're going back out into your society. So we do take mental health a lot more serious than we have in the past, and we address it. And it's one of those things that is it's high on General Neely's list, his priorities.
Chief,
Yes. Yes,
Question for you.
absolutely.
Regard, does it involve anything that, since you're involved with Poland,
Yes.
and we have this immigration problem in Ukraine, and Poland's really being desperately hit with that, is the Guard involved in that?
No, we don't take any, the state partnership program is, we're supposed to enhance and assist them in a hands-off, like if they ask questions, we're their mentor and all of that, but it really is just a separation of the military things, like we don't send anything over there, we don't, yeah. But I will say that when we were there, they started taking, like, us being over there allowed them to modernize, I guess I would say, for lack of a better word, their military, because most countries are active duty only. And so, the Guard concept is not something that they embrace, but because of those issues, it was something that they were starting to think about, like the ticker, so. But no, we don't do anything with that. And the reason suicide is in here, because it talks about community and collaboration. You guys are our hugest fans and our supporters, and it's a community effort. Sexual assault is another one. We're not going to get into all of the numbers and all that. I just wanted to highlight some of the things, like when we go, it's not just training and all that. We're trying to, it's a whole airman, whole soldier concept of making sure you're resilient and you're ready for your duty. Diversity and inclusion in the Illinois National Guard. So this is another huge topic, because as I said, it's 75 years of the Illinois Air National Guard, and I was the first female. I was the first minority. So a lot of it is trying to get more minorities, more people to look at the Guard and or want to serve in the military. It hasn't been something that, I don't know that they've looked favorably on. It hasn't been a benefit to them. So that's why we are looking, but we have a Joint Diversity Executive Council, and we sit and we talk and we try to get into those areas. In Chicago, we have a storefront, so that Guard has never been, a recruiting station. You see the active duty ones, and they're all at the strip malls. We've never had a Guard presence there. It's always been active duty, but in the mall up at Chicago, we actually have a Guard station, which is a first for all of us. But it gives the young youth in society an opportunity to make a commitment to the Guard, which isn't the same as an active duty. It's a scary commitment to make, and sometimes they don't want to. So we highlight the Guard aspect, and so we have that presence there.
Do you go into the schools?
That's a very good question. We did. Pre-COVID, it was a huge thing for us. Our recruiters would go and be in the school. I remember the Marine table when I was in high school, and you just quickly run by because you're like, I don't want to be in the Marines. But no offense, Jerry, but because it was tough, I was like, I don't know if I can do that. But so COVID shut everything down, and so it's really hard to get back in the schools. But that's where we want to be. So they've done more like fairs and outdoor events where they believe that those that would benefit from the Guard. So that is a very good question, but COVID really changed a lot of things, and I don't know that we'll go back in the schools anytime soon, because it's just, in the military, if I was going to certain air bases here in the state, I would still be required to wear a mask.
Well, it just seems to me that it's hard to make a commitment to something you don't know anything about.
Absolutely. Would you like a job in the Illinois Air National Guard? You could be a really great recruiter, because that's the whole point. We have to be seen, and we have to be out, right? And we have to talk about it, and we have to advertise it, and I'm older, but I had my college paid for. I deployed to Iraqi freedom and I have a 9/11. I have a scholarship, 4-year scholarship waiting for my daughter when she's eligible for college. And there's just so many benefits and things, especially when you don't know what you want to do or you don't have the means in which to pay for it or benefits. But that commitment, the life commitment, meaning your physical life, that's a huge commitment. But yeah, so we need to recruit more. We just need to educate.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
what's the pay raise, range for active duty and your,
For the guard.
yeah,
So that's a very good question. Did you know that I get paid the same 1 week in a month an active duty person gets paid? Because I'm paid by my rank. It's just I don't get paid every day to where an active duty person does.
and what about retirement?
That's another really good question. Gosh, you guys should be in recruiting for the Air National Guard. This is great. But so as an AGR, if I did my 20 years, I got a 20-year retirement, just like active duty. So the minute I retire one day, the very next day I get my pension. If you're a Guard member, you do 20 years, you retire, you go into a ready reserve. When you turn 60, they process and you get your money. Yeah. Awesome. There's lots of different rules with that, but yeah, basically that's
Well, men, money means a lot.
it does it, and money does mean a lot, and it's hard to tell a kid when they're 25 and they got their first job and they spend it all on a car. If you do the 20 years because you retire. You leave the Guard in 20 years, but when you're 60, you may want that money. You may need that money. But it's hard. It's a hard sell to get them to commit to a 20-year thing for something they don't have any concept of that timeline. But so we try our best to convince them. Get more access to school and diverse communities. You hit it on the head right there. We're going to go through these. These are Illinois National Guard fallen since September 11, 2001. So really cool when you go to Camp Lincoln, we have a wall and we keep these pictures up at all times because it's really important to remember all of those that served and lost their lives so we can be here. And these are all the ones in the Illinois National Guard since September 11th, and it's the same thing, you don't realize this until you see it up. How many? Questions? Yes?
Yes, the other day I was watching television, and they said that the military, as far as enrollment and personnel enlisting, is way, way down. Do you think, in your own unbiased opinion, that maybe this country should go back to the draft and get these young individuals a taste of what it's like, and then after 2 or 3 years they can come back to, whatever? Or do you think they should stay away from it?
Well, in my unbiased opinion, I don't really have one on that concept because it's so foreign to me. I don't remember the draft, so I don't know all the ins and outs of it. And I know a lot of you do, but I don't know how that would be because one of the reasons is, obviously COVID played a big role. If you're in the military, you will be vaccinated. And I don't, sometimes that's a hard sell for people, and it's their choice, but there are no, right now there is no other options for that, so it is way down. A change in quality of life, I think COVID taught us a little bit about that too, that we spent more time with our family and so going back to making a commitment is really hard. And I don't know what the answer is per se. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that because I don't really have an input on that. Yes, Edith.
What were some of your duties when you were deployed during the Desert
Okay.
Storm and in Iraq?
Very good question. So when I was deployed, I went as a backfill. So that means the person that was slated to go, that was tagged to go, couldn't go. And there was always someone that was not in my area. So I was a personnelist. But when I deployed, I went as a scheduler. So I was the ops scheduler. I knew nothing about scheduling airplanes, crew rest, all those different, there's medical requirements, but I learned really quick. And I had a blast doing it because, I mean, I worked with a whole bunch of pilots. And they're rowdy and they never slept. So I was the scheduler in the first time I deployed. The second time I deployed, I worked again in operations, and I was the NCOIC, so I was in charge of the whole shop. I was in charge of the schedulers, the SOF, and then, which is the supervisor of flight. So I had to make sure that someone was always at the radio. I was in charge of intel, and I made sure people had their time off, when was the mail picked up, and if there was when I was deployed during Iraqi freedom, I was in Iraq, so we got a lot of mortars over, so you had to, when you heard it go over, okay, you gotta go out, someone's gotta go out and make sure it's clear. So I was that person, so those are my duties. And everyone that is deployed knows you're every job. It doesn't matter what you were supposed to do other than a pilot, maybe, and that, but when you're there, if someone needed dinner, you went and got dinner, because that's what you did. And you worked 7 days a week. Sometimes you got an afternoon off, but I will tell you though, deployments were my favorite. You got to totally disconnect from the crazy world, and you were a team, and you spent the same time with everyone, and there was a lot of camaraderie, and the support from home, it was pretty cool. I enjoyed it. Maybe not so much everyone else. Anything else? Questions? I'm going to give you a quick overview, because my specialty is Air National Guard, even though I represent the state at the state level leadership. I don't know that much about the Army. So the 183rd Wing in Springfield, Illinois, as you know, lost their F-16s during a BRAC in 2005. Since then, they became a Air Operations Center for the 12th Air Force. So it's South America is who we support, and we watch, if you watch the movies where they would go into a big room, and it's got like 18 TV screens across there, and they're watching everything, that's exactly what they have. And they do that, and they run that operation during instances from Springfield, Illinois, and they support South America. Like, it's just amazing how things have changed. No boots on the ground for the 183rd, but they are looking to expand. They are looking to build a new civil engineer complex. They have a SURF, which is the centralized, it's an engine thing. It's like a deep depot. So they get engines from across the United States and the world, and they rebuild them there in Springfield, Illinois, which they always had the best maintenance in the F-16 world anyway, so they work on them now. But that's what they did after their BRAC. The 182nd has a C-130, very aging, and they're looking to get a new conversion on there, but they just got a new firehouse, and they are huge. And they also house a TAC-P, which I don't know if everyone knows that, a tactical P unit that goes in. And one of the people that was on the Fallen Heroes wall was Jacob Frazier, and he was from the TAC-P there in Peoria. The 126 is the KC-35, and they're looking to upgrade to a KC-46. So they're always looking, that's our new next generation tanker. They need a new hangar, so that's what they're looking at. So sometimes when you're like, boy, the military you don't hear much about, but they're always changing, and we're always trying to modernize. And we're fortunate, if you do any research of the different states, to have 2 flying wings in a state, guard-wise, is huge. It's huge. Most of them only have one flying, and then they have other missions. So we're very fortunate to have those in the state of Illinois to support us and to support the active duty Air Force. Yes, sir.
KC-135s, how long have they been flown? Lucky to say one thing, I was in 61 years ago when they were flying on this.
Well, and General Nazamas just retired last week, and that's what he was talking about, how long they have been. They're still around, and I fly in them all the time, but yeah. Legacy aircraft, I mean, I look at the A-10. How many times have we been trying to get rid of the A-10, and it keeps coming back because it's just a great aircraft. Yeah, perfect. Any other questions? Comments? Fun facts?
In your years of experience, especially with Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom, have you been in a position, to come across either any world leaders or B, Defense Secretary or Cabinet?
No. But when you're, especially in a deployed location, is really hard to, I'm the command chief of the Illinois Air National Guard, but on a world prospect, that means nothing, really. I'm just one of many, but.
Oh, it means something.
It does, but I mean, world leader-wise, no, but I will share a story. When I was in Iraq, everyone's watched MASH. That's the tent and that. And when we were at Balad, and when they asked for volunteers, like, could you volunteer after hours at the hospital? Because we have a lot of children that come in. And they were from the village, and they just got in the crossfire. And so the parents, because they had no way of getting them medical attention, they would drop them off at our main gate and leave them. Because they couldn't be seen, bringing that. So anyway, we went volunteered with the children, and it was literally a huge tent. And you walk through, and each operating room was a little tent attached to the big tent, attached to another big tent, and you walk through, and it was something that I saw on TV, and I was like, that doesn't happen anymore. We got a hospital, and it does, and it was awesome. The things that they could do, they ran just like they were in a regular hospital, and had all the equipment, and we sat and we played with the children, and some of the parents would come into the hospital then to visit their children and all that, and it was very different for them because I am a female. It was hot, and so I didn't have my outer jacket on, and so my arms were exposed or whatever, and it was a really hard, I think, culture shock for both of us to go through that. So I mean, these are experiences that I'll carry with me the rest of my life, but it does put it in perspective how you fit into the world peace. I appreciate everyone. I want to thank Edith because she didn't really explain to me what I was getting into. She was like, oh, this is going to be a lot of fun, and no questions, 3 people will be here. No, I really appreciate your patience. I know I'm not an aviator, even though I've flown in lots of Air Force planes, but I appreciate everyone here who has served, is serving, your sacrifices, the stories you probably could tell me if you got up here and had the microphone. I would love to hear them, and I really appreciate your hospitality. Your museum is phenomenal. It is a little gem, hidden secret. I had no clue. I mean, I'm totally flabbergasted. I can't even believe this is going on YouTube. But anyway, I wanted to thank you guys again, and I appreciate it, and I hope you guys have a good evening.